to have one.
Okay, I think you're.
Hey, how you doing? I don't mean that. I forgot you switched to stream. I think it's a good idea.
I think it's the only problem that we have that I haven't solved yet. So when I'm gone, how are we doing?
Because you have the laptop.
Oh, sure, I'll sit by you.
Because like our old laptop and stuff.
You can stand these. That's more like it. Because I'm so hungry. I don't think you can stand these.
Hook up strings somehow to. It's a long time.
For USB, that's a good one. Because that's the same with the
Yeah.
that would be great, because then the only problem with that is Wednesday, when I put the slides in the song. But I did think about that, dude. I'm just not sure we can run that.
It's a long run, but it's the solution.
You can use my laptop if you wish, but if you leave yours, I can't do it. I tried. It's not possible.
How much,
Just about 3 hours.
Yeah, it's
how much do you rely on that?
Well, on Wednesdays it wasn't very good. Here, I'll just start.
Hello, you two. Good. I'm gonna see you do it. See how good, how accurate you are.
Oh, he's very good. I know it was a Christ.
Is your elk permit is number 16?
I know USB.
Okay.
So we have to study it. We have to talk that. There's so much proof.
Probably be done in 2 days. You know, but that's exactly the thought I had too.
Yeah.
No, here, let me go grab the one from the team.
Because I'm trying to learn the first name. Everybody, and I haven't gone to the last name. Yeah. What is your last name? Hi. You're not hi today. No, I go hi.
He introduced himself. David Sheffield.
So you put scary strings.
I was watching, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie with Mike Myers, Still I Married an Axe Murderer.
To me, he preached the most.
His dad's a Scottish old
That
man.
was his biggest sermon.
Wow, it's run by a secret organization called the Pentagonate. It's only 5 people that control the whole world is going on. And I didn't realize Mike Myers about 2 or 3 years ago made a Netflix series called the Pentagonate. It was making fun at the original quote from the movie 25, 30 years ago. And so I mentioned
That's pretty
I thought that was
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, my wife's pretty
Thank you.
Just don't have anything.
How far back is
Yeah.
however exactly you want to look at that.
That's better because I gotta put my drums in.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was asking about that the other day.
I'm all for bringing back for a good sermon series called Make Believe.
No, you're all for the iron.
I haven't trust
The only shortfall.
but someday I'd like to.
Yeah, I have always bring back the big one just for a short time, just to show the kids.
I don't even know what big bolt that you're talking about.
Why are you attacking my spider?
There's like a wood one for sure. I know there is a big one. But no, I'm not now because it's.
Or you can give me
I don't like the big ones because I
I love
stand behind them.
it.
Did you take a couple there outside? That's great.
Ready to go. I have a spider. I gave him a spider. And received an article trying to convert me back.
Okay.
was started out as two little guys and got stuff. They were,
No hurry.
just something. And now they're taking off. Oh, they didn't get a kick out.
Have you out for dinner? Try to buy a muzzle for Charlie.
Two of that.
We should have you over my house.
Let's see. I did think if Charlie had a muzzle.
Okay, let's go ahead and get class kicked off here.
It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, and he was right. He nipped at my ankles when I rode one in the backyard trying to.
We'll be in the book of John, the last chapter, yeah, or is it 22? 21, the last chapter.
Okay.
I'll start us out this morning reading a little bit out of the book of Daniel. And Daniel chapter 7. I kept looking up until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took a seat. His vesture was white, like snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. His wheels were burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat, and the books were open. I talked about this last night with my daughter, and we went to Revelation, and we talked about what the Son of Man looks like, and John being on Patmos. It's funny because they don't remember anything about Revelation or anything about John, but if you start singing the song, John the Revelator, the kids all, oh yeah, I know that song, right? So we talked about that. We talked about the appearance of the Son of Man. We talked about how the Son of Man comes before the Ancient of Days, and the Ancient of Days gives him all dominion. We talked about what dominion is, and I think it's nice to point that out. I really like that complete parallel difference in time. You know, we're talking Daniel's probably what 500-600 BC, and then John's 250, 185 AD, somewhere in there, maybe. I don't know how old John lived to be, but you know,
Yeah, it might be pushing it a little. Maybe
yeah,
more 70.
150.
What? 150, John?
No, you're more like 70.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll do 150 AD. Jesus crucified 32, right?
Yeah, you're probably looking more like 75.
75. Yeah.
Do some digging on that. If you really want.
I'm not really.
Okay.
All right. We will go into John chapter 21. Anybody have any comments or feedback from last week's study at all? Anything found? Anything exposition to talk about? I like 21. I think that if anybody watched the show King of the Hill, Mike Judge, I like King of the Hill. He's a big fan of propane, right? And in John chapter 21, it says that the apostles came upon the shore, and there was a charcoal fire that was prepared. So I don't know. Would the Lord have used propane if it was available? I don't know. Who knows? We'll go ahead and jump into that. Looks like we'll do verses 1 through 14. Does anybody want to read 1 through 14 this morning? Chapter 21. You got it? Yeah. Go right ahead.
Some other people an opportunity. 1 through 14?
Yep.
Stand up and face the crowd so they can hear. After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. They said to him, we will go with you. They went out and got in the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, children, do you have any fish? And they answered him, no. He said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of the fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved therefore said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards off. When they got on the land, they saw a charcoal fire in place, with fish laid out on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of fish, large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead.
Was that ESV?
ESV.
Okay. The NASB has a little different take on a couple words in there. But it's important. Jesus himself said, "Come have breakfast." So it's the most important meal of the day, right? We'll continue in the commentary here on page 143 this morning if you want to join with us. The disciples listened to the words of Mary Magdalene and went to the Sea of Galilee to meet a resurrected Jesus, just as an angel told her, as referenced in Matthew 28. 7 of the 11 disciples went to the Sea of Galilee and waited for another miraculous appearance of their teacher. Perhaps frustrated from the delay of not seeing Jesus, Peter decides to revert back to what he was doing before Jesus called him. Peter went fishing and the other followed, John 21 verse 3. It's important to observe when under pressure, accompanied by confusion, it's easy to go back to what makes us comfortable. No, do not take a new opportunity and ruin it by using an old method. Peter went back to the occupation he had prior to meeting Jesus. Although the ministry he envisioned with Jesus seemed to be nothing more than a disappointment, he still had a family to feed. While on the water, Jesus himself came back to the same scene that he met Peter, this time like the first, giving him a new opportunity. Jesus spoke to them saying, "Children, you do not have any fish, do you?" Obviously, Jesus doesn't ask questions because he doesn't know. He knew they didn't have any fish. He instructed them to cast their nets to the right side of the boat. Now this is a moment of the quote wills. Either they can disregard the voice of authority of this stranger, or submit their will to his and obey his voice. Trusting God requires obeying his voice, even when we don't understand nor control the outcome. With nothing to lose, and their catch at 0, they obeyed, and the catch results were phenomenal. Going from 0 to 153 fish is similar to the prophet Elijah going from a drought to an abundance of rain, 1 Kings. How could this happen? The conclusion is clear. John knew with certainty and told Peter, "It is the Lord." What the world struggles to explain for the believer is the answer. It is the Lord. Hearing these words and believing it was the Lord, Peter again gets out of the boat and goes to meet Jesus while the other disciples remained in the boat. The last meal Jesus had with his disciples was the supper at night before his betrayal by Judas and his crucifixion. This is the first recorded meal he had with the disciples after being denied by Peter and raised from the dead. It's breakfast. He prepared for his disciples early in the morning. Considering his appearance may have been different after his resurrection, as Mary Magdalene and the men on the Emmaus road did not recognize him. The disciples knew they were with certainty they were with the Lord. Any comments or feedback on that section? I really like how the commentator addresses the fact that Peter went back to what he was doing when Jesus called him. I think that's a stark parallel to our own lives, I think, right? I mean, how many times are we tempted to go back into the pattern of sin or the way it was before? I mean, not everybody, myself, I grew up in the Church of Christ, so if I was too bad of a kid, my parents would hit me with a belt, or Pat Bauer would pinch me in the neck really hard. So, a lot of us missed out on that culture, we're raised in the church. Everybody, you snap, everybody look, that's my church, all the kids are like, was that my parents, right? that was the culture we were raised in. But even growing up there and returning to sin, returning to the things that are shackled us, and before, because Jesus, what did Jesus call Peter? What did he say? I'm sure we remember that.
Fisher of men.
He's going to make you
A fisher
of men. Come with me, follow me, right? And Peter doesn't think about it for a day, right? He literally lets go of his net, walks away, and you see him return back to the net. It's an interesting idea.
I just love how it's Peter who walked on water, hopped out of the boat the first time, and it's Peter who throws on. It's almost funny to me. He throws his clothes back on, like he almost was like, maybe I'll walk on the water again. But he's the one that gets out of the boat and runs in the water to Jesus. Also, I like to point out that Jesus already has cooked fish. It's not the catch that they bring in that he offers them. It's
He was already planning.
miraculous. Yeah.
Jesus didn't have to make them see results, right? He could have just called them out of the boat. But he drew the attention to the fact that they were just doing what they were doing before. In the same way, remember when Jesus called the disciples, they hadn't caught anything either, right? They have been out fishing all day, and they had no catch. The same thing reoccurred here. I don't know, there's a lot of words inside that, I suppose, because it talks about disregarding the voice of authority or submit their will to his and obey his voice. I think we all probably have a story of that. I mean, Lord knows, I left my hometown, and mostly at the pleadings of my wife, because I thought it was, not the end of the world, but I left everything and went somewhere. And it was a decision that we prayed about and prayed about and prayed about and prayed about, and like as a family, over the course of 6 months. I prayed about it, and the Lord told me no, but the door was open. I could see the door. And my boss says, I'll send you to Colorado. You can start next week. And my dad had cancer, stage 4 cancer. And I prayed and I prayed, and I wasn't sure what to do. And I certainly felt like the Lord or the Spirit prevented me from going. And then my dad passed away. And then I moved to Washington. And it's like, when you look back, at least over my life, I see the dominoes just falling. Same thing when I came to Wyoming. Harold's parents had bought the property, what was it, maybe 3 or 4 days before I showed up?
Yeah, maybe a week and a half.
Maybe a week. And just conveniently, I had somewhere to park rent-free, because I couldn't afford to live anywhere else. I couldn't rent a house. There was no rentals available. It just happened to come here, and Harold happened to have something for me. And Harold's like, oh, do you know so-and-so? And I'm like, wow, yeah, I know so-and-so. I don't know, you can call that not listening to the will of God. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But I see God's hand at work in my past. Anybody else have a story you want to share about that?
Well, I think it's important sometimes that we have to do that. I mean, because what a lot of people don't understand how active God is. And for the old people that can just give you, I'm not going to go into my life, but I'm just telling, like you just said, is helpful to somebody that's new in Christianity, because they don't understand how active God really is. Like, why are we praying for him?
Yeah.
Why are we learning what to do? Because God is more active than you do. So that when you get in tough times, if we would only look at how God has helped us before instead of whining and crying. And Jesus says in Luke 9:62, but Jesus said to them, no one after putting his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God. I think it's just maturity.
I'm going to work with that a little bit too.
Yeah.
So we're not there yet. We're going to read in a second, but what Jesus calls Peter to is no longer to be a fisherman. Right. Even though he went back to be a fisherman, he says, go feed my sheep, build my church, for lack of better words. And I think on to Dan's point of, we can sometimes see God at work when we don't want to see him at work. When life is not working out and we're like, why the heck is life not working out? That's probably how the guys in the boat were feeling. Why aren't we catching any fish? We're fishermen, for dang sake, And Jesus can make that happen. But I think a lot of times, how often do we deny God's calling in our life because we're doing what we think we need to be doing.
Absolutely.
And it's not working out. We're like, why is it not working out? It's like, because you're not asking Jesus, God, what you need to be doing.
I preach a sermon on that. Brenda, yeah.
It always amazes me with Peter. I mean, Peter saw Christ do all these different things. He saw him help heal his mother-in-law. He saw all these things, but it really, truly impressed him the most when it had to do with his job. I mean, when it had to do with the boat and the water and the sea, the wind and the waves, the fish, everything that he knew from his childhood growing up that he was so sensitive about. That was when he would bow down to Christ, was when it was things that affected his life that he knew before, such as the fishing. But it didn't affect him that way when he healed his mother-in-law or when he saw other people healed or fed or anything else. It was only when it had to do with his occupation that he would bow down to. He understood then how sovereign Christ was. That was his wake-up call to understand the sovereignty of Christ when he knew that he fished all night and he didn't catch anything. And now just put the net on the other side of the boat because the master told him. And so this affected him because it had to do with what he was familiar with.
Well, you got to remember too that Jesus says, "Who do people say I am?" And Peter's the one that said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And he says, "And I also say to you, Peter," this is where he changed his name, "upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven." He opened it up on the day of Pentecost to the Jews, and he did it to Cornelius to the Gentiles. It was Peter. Okay? "And whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." And he gave it to the other apostles in Matthew 18:18. So it's all coming to a head right now. All this is coming. It's amazing to be, and like all the miracles and all this is just, sometimes we have to look at them and go, this is like truly, no words can explain it.
You know, and I think Jesus did the absolute, like Brendan said, the thing that would make Peter fall.
Yeah.
Right? And Lord knows I've been here for over 2 years and I'm struggling. Right? Because my occupation is maybe how I gauge what I need to do. Right? And I'm struggling. I'm struggling through this. And I say, why, God, why isn't this easier? Well, my wife, Jordan, we're here for a reason. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that. Okay? I'm a man. I want to do results. I want to see things happen. And I think that, God, through my whole life, is teaching lessons. He's teaching something. And I'm just too stupid to learn it quick. So, yeah, Terry.
I think there are times you need to look at the unseen as well, and all the things that God is doing that you have no clue. I recall one time in my life where I was on I think I was probably on my way to church, and I realized I'd forgotten something. So I turned around, went back, got it, came back to the intersection in which I had been, I had turned around, and there was a horrific accident there that I could have been part of if I hadn't forgotten something and turned around.
Oh, yeah.
How many times is God working in your life where you are frustrated or go, why did this happen, or why? And then years later, months later, days later, minutes later, you can see why, and sometimes never. Sometimes you'll never know why exactly something happened. But we need to start appreciating that God is in all the details of our life, day in, day out, moment in, moment out. You don't have to ask why, because you know His hand is there all the time.
Yep. Proverbs, I think it might be Proverbs 27. I got memorized. It's on a little piece of stone in my house. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding in all your ways. Acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths, right? That's not like, well, on Sunday we acknowledge our Lord and Savior. You know? Or Wednesday night at 7 o'clock we acknowledge Jesus Christ. In all of your ways. Even when you're stupid, you have to acknowledge the fact that you believe in God the Father, God the Son, right? The Son of Man, the Ancient of Days, right? The combined effect. His Spirit is with us and among us. That's a good
Jeremiah
parallel.
29:11.
That's right.
For I know the plans I have for you.
Mm-hmm. Prosper you.
You got us thinking about this, like, what, 3 weeks ago, too? You said something about, like, you grew up going to church anytime the doors are open type of thing. And I've had some really good discussion with various people about that, because you really sparked. And on to Terry's point and to your point, if you are claiming to be a follower of Christ, the beginning of what you're going to do, not the conclusion, but the beginning of what you're going to do is come be with His people. Come study His Word. Come worship together. And sometimes I think people are like, oh, that's the cross. That's the finish line. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm like,
salvation.
that's it.
I got dunked in the tank.
I got dunked in a tank. I'll come Sunday for worship.
Right.
You know, but if you really are trying to be led by God in your entire life, the beginning of your entire life is a couple of hours that we spend 3 times a week. You know what I mean? And so that's really powerful to me to communicate. That's the beginning of the Christian walk.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I was over here striking rocks together and it's causing fire. Yeah, cool.
I want to go backwards to Jeremiah 29:11 because I love to point out that they're told, the children of Israel, they're told this, that God is planning to prosper them as they face 70 more years of slavery. That doesn't feel like prospering all the time. And, 70 years of
They can't see it.
terrible work. Yeah, they can't see it. But he's making that promise. And even when it doesn't feel like it. Yeah, I think that applies to our life too. Like, we will be prospered even if it doesn't feel like it. I believe later we'll see.
Terry's story reminded me of a story from my childhood. A lot of people don't know. But I was, I'm not anymore, but in the past, I was a very avid hunter. Right? My aunt she was a contester. This lady won. She won 3 cars, multiple cruises, hundreds of tickets to Disneyland. She mass contests. She has a bag, and she'll take her forms and her envelopes and stamp them. And we would go hunting for hours, and she would be in the truck with a heated blanket, just contest, just filling out papers to mail in. So she says, "Give me your hunting license number." Okay, I give it to her, and I start getting these letters in. Congrats, you've been selected for this hunt, this hunt, this hunt, this hunt. Next thing you know, my whole fall is booked up with hunting trips every weekend because I'm winning these hunting trips. So Pheasants Forever was one of the things that we did. And I went to Pheasants Forever as a 13-year-old who really, most of his experience was shooting clay pigeons, right? And I went out there and I didn't get a bird. The first time I got a bird, second time I got 2 birds. Maybe the 5th or 6th time I got 3 birds. There was kids that weren't getting any birds, and I was like, that's too bad. But I remember one time we were walking, and they put us in groups of 8, and these volunteers would come and be the hunt guides for the youth kids. And sometimes they had a dog. Sometimes the dog was excellent. The dog would run through the grass and point at the bird, and the owner would signal, and the bird would fly. Sometimes the dog was retarded. The dog would just take off. No interest in pheasant hunting at all. Right? And me, I'm like 17, 16, I can't remember how old I was, but I was getting close to aging out of the junior hunts. And we're all walking the line, and I'm with a bunch of kids, kind of like Terry's story, and there's a sagebrush right. And I'm looking at it, and I got my gun, I'm a trail carrying, I can't remember left or right or up like this, I'm like, there's no way there's a pheasant in that bush. I kick it. A pheasant shoots out. I hit the ground. The bird drops 2 or 3 feet in front of me. Because the kids, boom, 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 boom. A week later, a kid got shot in the face. And I was like, that could have been me. If I wasn't smart enough to hit the dirt, because I was like, these kids are all eager to get a bird. It's just crazy how little things like that are again, you want to call it coincidence? You can. You know? But do you acknowledge God when he does good things or when he takes away or prevents?
Coincidence is just when God chooses to remain anonymous.
Uh-huh. I guess that's a question. Just ties in the conversation Harold had too. You know? Do you profess as a Christian that God is sovereign? Is he in our lives? Is he doing and controlling and steering and guiding like he did the Apostle Paul through the Spirit? Right? The Spirit prevented, the Spirit directed, the Spirit guided, the Spirit told me, the Spirit spoke to you. These are all the things that it does in that time. But do we acknowledge that? Thank you. Today. And then does that translate into our Christian walk? I mean, again, I expressed it a few weeks ago. I'm glad that sparked some conversation, right? I hate sharing my personal feelings in front of my group, right? But I feel a little guilty about the fact that I don't really want to come to Wednesdays when I work all day sometimes, you know? Struggle with that. Try to watch it online, fall asleep in the middle of watching it on YouTube or something like that, you know what I mean? Or the cats are jumping on me and attacking me, I'm not paying attention. It's always something. But that's good that there's conversation about that. In my opinion, it's good because
I think it's a really good thought process that you and Terry are going down of like even the idea did God spare my life at some point so that because he had more work for me to do. I mean, I definitely feel like he spared my life because he had more work for me to do. It's less dramatic than almost getting shot by 12-year-old pheasant hunting. But I think a lot of time we just like don't even think about that. God could have had a hand in keeping me around for something. Good story.
I remember one time I did a semi-truck tire. I doubt anybody here has been to Berkeley, California. But my service area for where my job was about 100 miles diameter. Right? So I had to go, I got a phone call. I got a semi-truck down on the steer tire on the freeway. I'm like, okay, hopefully it's where there's a big shoulder. No. It was the causeway where Berkeley turns into Emeryville, and it's about 5 lanes, and the shoulder's about the size of this table. And that was where the truck was stopped. So I've got my impact gun. You don't want to be seen. It's a right hand. You got a handle here and a trigger here. And I am taking the bolts off of this semi-truck tire, looking at oncoming traffic. Right? Wow. That's something else. Cars are whizzing by at 75. Of course, no highway patrol were going to stop and, no. But it had to be done. Just the crazy stuff that I've done over the course of my life. Like I said, just what do you do with that? Chalk it up to nothing?
Not bad.
Any more conversation or commentary on the passages or anything you want to bring up? We're close to the end of John.
I've got to do it. Sometimes we don't understand Christianity.
Sometimes?
Okay? We are called the church, the called out ones. We're out of the world.
Yep.
Come and die so you can live is the gospel. Okay? And just look at Romans 8. The Spirit, this is Romans 8:16. I just want to put a perspective that sometimes we think that just because we're following Christ, everything's going to be sunshine, shine, and rainbows. But reality is opposite. Okay? The Spirit Himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God. And if, children, heirs also, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with Him, so that we may also be glorified with Him. For I consider the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us. Just a different perspective of sometimes of our earthly thinking of Christianity versus what God is thinking of it.
I don't remember where it's written in Scripture, but it talks about God setting eternity in the hearts of men. And like this is just all of our struggles and strife,
Right.
and money issues and frustrations and arguments with your wife or frustrations with your kid because they're being a butthead. That's what I'm going through, a 13-year-old, right? Just a little bit, just a glimpse. It's not even compared to eternity. I don't know. I get nerdy about that because that song Any of you guys listen to that song "Holy Forever"? Maybe we'll have to play that video this morning. "Holy Forever" was a praise and harmony cover of, was it Chris Tomlin that wrote this song? I don't remember who it was.
My phone's over there. I'll find it.
I think it's a bunch of.
It was a group. But it's that idea, like you said, that all this stuff isn't
God said it.
Yeah, like you pointed out. that little bit, it's kind of insignificant to the fact that we're gonna be with God in the end of our lives. And we're gonna literally work. There's not gonna. I told my daughter this last night. I was like, "There's gonna be no sun in heaven." She's like, "What?" She's like, "Oh, what are we gonna do?" I'm like, "God's the light. We will be so close to God that He will illuminate everything." And that drawing our minds to that it's important to me. I think it makes me smile. It makes me happy. And if you don't get happy thinking about that, what? And why? You know, what do we do this for? What is it? If you can't smile and think about being rid of this world, back with our Creator, not even wearing the body, what's the point of your faith if it's that sad? I don't know.
And it asks the question, are we called to more than we acknowledge? Because we often are.
Reluctantly, yeah.
Absolutely.
The same reason I'm up here behind this little podium with my coffee. Like I said, I didn't move to Wyoming to be a Bible class teacher. If I had my way, I probably wouldn't even lead singing, because if there's somebody better, go ahead, do it. You know, I don't. If there's somebody that's going to do it more often or more excited than me, go ahead. I can sit in Sunday morning and sit in the pews, participate. You know, it'd be easier for me, right? I wouldn't have to study the Bible. I wouldn't have to read out of this book or study this or look at different translations or look at the Greek interlinear like we talked about on Wednesday night. Wouldn't have to tuck my shirt in either.
Oh, you don't ever have to do that.
I have to if I wear a pole. I got to tuck the shirt. Just basic question. Well, what are we doing on time?
9:39.
We're close. We only got 7 minutes. I'm going to leave the rest of John for Harold. We've been trying to drag out as long as we can. What are we doing next? We talked about. We did the epistles.
Letters.
Yeah, so we're unless I get any last minute comments right now. So what we're going to go forward with after John, because we're definitely going to finish it last week or next week. We're going to do on Sunday mornings, unless you guys have different thoughts, we're going to do the letters to people. So that'd be 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon. Those are all written to, Brother Timothy, Titus, Philemon. And then on Wednesdays, after we are done with our tools and tactics study, we're going to look at the letters to the churches. So we'll be in a lot of Paul stuff, but I think they will play off of each other pretty nicely. So
Sure.
Unless there's something like, you're feeling stuck because you're not getting fed, unless you have a better suggestion for a different book of the Bible or something like that. So, but I think they'll play off of each other nicely, and that'll be a long plan, but it'll be constantly changing. So, unlike Proverbs, we spent 13 and a half
suggested
weeks.
Revelations, but we weren't sure we wanted to go there.
Yeah.
Let's just read chapter 1. Yeah.
Just get what churches it's based to and all
Yeah.
that jazz, and then be like, okay, you can figure it out from there.
7 golden lampstands and the 7 stars in the hands of the Son of Man. What are the 7 stars? They're just 7 churches, right? Yeah. The chapter 1 is done. That's all.
See a lot of
Opinions on the Revelation.
I've done it for that study for 8 years. I still don't have.
I'm super happy to be done with Proverbs. I've said that a few times.
Me too.
We decided where we're going. Any more comments or feedback? Anywhere? Dennis, yes, sir.
Where he feeds them or the fish, it doesn't say here he ate any with it. It just says he. But at the end of Luke, it does say he ate fish.
Okay, thank you.
And to me, that's, if I was Thomas, that would be even a bigger deal than thinking I had touched somebody. It'd be watch him eat something and not fall on the ground.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a spirit. And there are passages that indicate our resurrected bodies, at least in some ways, are going to be much like his. And so we might have something like a perfect physical body. We sure could. Adam and Eve did. and we'll be a new creation and so on. But we might be able to dematerialize just like he probably is going on up into heaven when they watched. Who knows? But my point is, there's not just the thing of Thomas touching his side. There's the thing of Jesus eating food in front of him.
Right. Thank you.
And it wasn't just some nice clothes. And when he left, there's a pile of clothes and some fish.
Sounds like a cartoon or something.
Well, because there's a lot of people who don't believe in the physical resurrection.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Well, in fact, I've heard a lot of people, they try to spiritualize too much of the Bible. It does plenty of spiritualizing and figurative things and so on, but on the other hand, there's things that it tries to make an effort to show us these are real flesh and blood. A pound of rocks is equal to a pound of sand. You know, I mean, they're real stuff for us.
And that's so hard for us to comprehend. Like, what are we like in heaven? It's hard to comprehend, right? Because it's all given to us in any physical term. That's the only thing we can understand. But Jesus being completely flesh, you know, the fish didn't fall through, but also the fact that he just passed through a crowd when they were about to stone him, right? Both at the same time, God and man. Even trying to describe that, like last week's sermon, trying to describe how that is hard to put into terms, right?
He walks in on the disciples in a locked room.
Yeah.
He didn't knock.
Peace
Right.
be with
He
you.
just appeared.
He didn't open the door.
immediately went to shore.
Yep. Oh, I love that. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I always like to think about it. You know, Jesus is about to get stoned. He just like, there's just an internal light switch. He just turns off, and he's like, okay, these people, like, time just slows down. He's like, I'm out here. Like, this is ridiculous. Fun.
He did it when they wanted to make him king, too.
Uh-huh.
Just walks through.
All right, so 21 verse
15 to the end.
Roger that.
Yep. Thanks for pointing that out, Dennis. That was good.
Yeah, very good.
Because I don't even think, you know, it's just terrifying. The ways you can go with distorting that message. Well, Jesus didn't really, he was a vegan. Whatever. You know? Just taking the details out of Scripture one by one. And I really appreciate the dialogue about 1 Corinthians. I thought that was with context. You study that. When women prophesy. Prophesy with.
Right.
Yeah. What's that all about?
That's a good example.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got a few minutes. No, we're about.
Almost perfect.
Yeah. Well, what you were saying reminded me
As though he
of
was
one of the
changing
guys
his
that I work with.
aspect
You
over and
know,
over,
not a
like
Christian.
his,
He was like,
his
if
physical.
I just follow your God, is
changed.
everything going to be great?
Because they didn't recognize him, and then when he spoke
No.
their name, he
No,
recognized,
promise
recognized him.
Following for that
Because he
reason.
had to have been somewhat healed from something.
I guess we go ahead and pray. We're out of time.
Otherwise, the wounds would still been bleeding. He was
Thank you.
scourged to the point where it wasn't recognizable.
You know, even dogs and babies recognize voices.
Yep.
And he might have resurrected with pretty much the same